Coming up first, we're going to have Rodger Blaker. He is our coach on the show. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to him because his guest today is Catherine Cates, and she is with the Around Town Kids. And they're going to talk about all that stuff, so I don't need to get into it. So without further ado, over to you, Rodger.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm on. Okay, Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is your first time here. I want to go through and just briefly say a little bit about you because we've been working together. You are one of my clients, and I think you're okay with me sharing that with the world out there, right? But what I've been talking about for about 4 or 5 weeks now is about entrepreneurship, starting a business or building a business. And I've gone through a number of steps, and I think you may have viewed some of that after hours when you're looking at the internet show. And been talking about the challenges, some of the difficulties, how to really lay out and find passion, whatever. And as I was developing this and working through it, I thought about you because being female and the passion you have, and as we've worked together just under a little 2 months actually, I think, but there are a lot of things that you display that I really appreciate about the fact of what you've done correlates with what I have been sharing with the audience out there. So I invited you on the show. I've already shared that with you. But I wanted to set that up, so that's what we're going to do. So you're an internet web business, and the name of your company is Around Town Kids, and you're the owner. And so I want to just ask you some questions, and we're going to go through a process here to give you a chance to kind of share some of your background, some things that you've done about this internet that you do and what started and things like that. And just have a dialogue about it because I think we'll get into some things that touch back on the things I've been talking about with the audience for the last 5 weeks. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Are you nervous?
Well, a little bit.
You're going to do great. The first question that I have for you is give the audience out there a little bit of background about what you did before you started this business.
Sure. Before I started it, I was 15 years in sales and marketing and did some training in the corporate world for Fortune 500 companies.
Okay. And what companies did you work for, if you could say, and what are some of the things that maybe you took from there that you, as you begin to look at what you were going to do, may have transferred over into starting a business for yourself?
I primarily did sales, as I mentioned, and the business that I have today, how I make my money is through sales.
Okay.
So it's basically a sales business.
Okay. So you end up doing it, and that's one of the primary things you use.
Right.
So how long have you been in business?
6.5 years.
Okay. And between what was the gap, or what happened when you were in the corporate world before leaving there, after leaving there, and starting this business? Kind of give us a little background about that transfer from a cubicle person to the internet-based personal business.
Sure. Left the corporate world and was married and had my son. Okay. And when I had my son, I decided to stay home with him, be a stay-at-home mom, and did that for a couple of years. And then that goes into how the whole business was born after that. Okay.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Kind of tell us the story, because I think people would be interesting to hear, because part of what we really went through and talked about was people may have lost their job not on their own, or maybe looking at it now, and especially we have a lot of the baby boomers, and they may be exploring about, because anymore trusting the corporate world, I mean, not to say just the economies.
Right.
And somebody may be thinking about this. So obviously you've gone through it, and I've shared a little bit about what I did, but I'd love to hear about some of the process you went through that drove you down the road to start this business.
Well, as I said, I decided to stay home with my son, and when he was a baby, I joined one of those moms groups where you get together and you socialize and socialize your kids. And I was elected president, and one of the things you have to do when you're president is you have to plan this event calendar, figure out where can I take my kids today, this week, whatever. And in doing so, I discovered that there's a lot of places out there that have activities that I had no idea, because when you have a little baby, you don't get out a lot, and you don't know what you don't know. Okay. So I discovered that, Toys R Us has story time, and Michael's had craft hour, and all these places that I had no idea, and they were all a paper schedule. And so I had to, take my little baby around and pick up all these schedules, and I thought, this is very frustrating and it's not convenient. And any mom out there that's had a baby will know that when you have a baby, it's not that easy. Just pick the baby up and say,
dragging your child around.
Let's go find, papers and magazines and stuff to figure out what to do.
And I want to picture this for anybody that's ever had children, they know or whatever, so we can all really get the humor of this. So you got a baby at home. You have the now car seat. You have the 25-pound bag of everything in the world. You got to wrap up that baby. Then you got to collect the baby. Then you got to get it dressed and everything. And of course, when the baby goes out, it throws its fits and things. So we can all imagine, and they're taking it in and out of a car, going in and out of stores and all that. Because can you imagine what that must be like? And that's what you were doing.
Exactly.
As one example. Okay, all right.
And that doesn't even take into account when they spit up and they have a messy diaper and all
my
that
point.
stuff. Those are rich into your plan. So
Right.
it's not convenient to just get out and, oh, let's go look for this. So I was frustrated as a parent because I knew there was this information out there, but there was no way to get it out.
It wasn't
to
accumulated and
disseminate it.
organized anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I thought, well, let's come up with a way that we can have a central repository for that information. And it's like, ooh, light bulb went off, a website. And, you know, websites were still pretty new at that time, 6.5 years ago. And there was no other website like mine out there at the time. So I came up with the concept, and that's basically how it was born.
So now, when you really started researching this, and you went out and began to look for something like this, I guess you used search engine, Googles or whatever, and you were looking around to see if anything like it was out there because you had a personal interest in it.
Right.
And you weren't finding anything.
There was nothing out there that at the time when I
Okay.
was looking for things, correct?
Okay. So the light bulb came on,
Right.
and I think as I've gotten to know you, and the first time we met, spent a number of hours just going through and really talking about this, it became clear to me that you're very entrepreneurial. You have, because, and I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things you really have as your future dreams too, because
Okay.
I think it reveals that. But going through that, what was the length of time when you began to look at this and then investigate it and begin to formulate maybe the idea? How long did that all take?
Just a few short months.
Okay.
It came together pretty quickly.
Okay. And I did ask you this earlier, and I'll go ahead and tell people, obviously, as you probably know out there on the airways, we don't come in here with just blank questions or everything. And one thing I spoke about is sometimes we do come to think of it. Never mind, that is true. Sometimes we wing it. But I asked you something about your passion around this, and I don't know if you really got clear there, but I was curious. I mean, is there something that when you really step in and look at this that you really feel very strongly about that matters to you or anything? Anything around this that comes up as you have developed it and where you are today?
Well, that was my passion, was to get the information out there. And I had the
Okay.
vision to create this and said, there's a need, we got to fill it.
Okay. All right. So it's because of that, it
Right.
really mattered to you, and you were a mother that has a small child, and you
Right.
understand very clearly. You got a question? Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I got a question. Do you keep, obviously I'm sure you do, the women that come to your website, are you finding they're predominantly like single mothers looking to help with the single mother side of things, or are they, I guess, married mothers? Can you tell a difference between the type of person you're actually getting to your site looking for this type of service or these services that you have?
Yeah, when we do surveys to get demographics, the single moms are a small minority. And surprisingly, there was a good majority, I wouldn't say it was 50-50, but a good majority that were working parents, which really shocked me because in the Collin County area, there's so many stay-at-home moms, but
Right.
there's a lot of working parents that use that.
Okay. And I guess I could kind of connect dots there that they're even busier
Exactly.
in having something like this.
Exactly.
And so that was an interesting question, Travis, and therefore you're finding that single mothers, you're not seeing use this so much. Is that?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. It's just
Okay.
that I think that there's not as great a majority of them in our area as there are.
Okay. It's the demographics
Right.
area.
Right.
Okay. All right. So since you started this, it's been 5.5 years. You've grown it. And I know you shared some things with me that you're working on right now to try to streamline it. So why don't you kind of talk about some of the things that you started out with and what you've learned. And, for example, you talk about redoing the website for reasons, which would go around some of your challenges you have. So what is some of those things you've looked at and realized you've had to modify and you've learned and changed through this process of creating this business?
How much time do we have?
Yeah, well, it's, so I told you,
Yeah.
didn't I tell you that it
That
fly
could be a
by
long
here?
answer,
So
but-
how is
yeah.
how you hit the high point? I mean, just something. What's one specific thing like that you've really seen that you've really had to tackle to try to help streamline this some?
Well, you have to grow. Every business has to grow, and you have to keep up with the times. And the technology has changed a lot in 6.5 years. I mean, it's just amazing how much has changed. And I'm not a programmer, and that was, one of the things that I wanted to touch on was that, one big piece of advice I could give to anybody starting a business is you've got to know your strengths and weaknesses and your own limitations. And my strength is the advertising and the marketing sales piece, but I'm not a programmer. I don't pretend to be. So immediately I had to hire that out.
Okay.
And I've had to continue to hire that out, and I have a really wonderful web developer I work with now, and so we just continue to tweak it, and we're going through some technology upgrades right now. We have to keep up with the times.
And I guess that would tie into what the most challenging thing that you've had to deal with, or is there something more to like something that really has been a hard, challenging process to handle? I mean, what's the biggest thing you deal with today around that?
Well, somebody once said to me, your business it's a hobby or it's a business.
Right, okay.
What do you want it to be?
Right.
And especially with a mom, so many stay-at-home moms, they develop a quote-unquote business, and it's really kind of a hobby. And at some point, if you want to continue doing it, you reach a juncture in the road where it's like, do I want to grow or do I want to stay small? Do I want it to be a hobby or do I want it to be a real business? And there's nothing wrong with any of those decisions. It's just decisions that every business owner has to make at some point. And I realized that, no, I don't want this to be a hobby. It's a business. And so I've had to continue to hire people to help with the workload.
And now I want to jump forward because you have some dreams or some things you really have as business objectives. So why don't you share with the audience what you really want to do with this business?
Well, it's been my goal ever since day one is to expand it and take it nationally because I've seen the need out there. There are a lot of cities that don't have this, and I get inquiries, all the time asking, how can I get it in my city? How can I do this? So there's definitely a need out there, and I want to disseminate the information, but also as an opportunity for, it doesn't have to be a mom. I mean, that's the ideal case, but it could be a dad. It could be a husband-wife team. Anybody could run this business, and it's a great, little business to have, especially in this down economy.
And so, as you've shared with me, you're trying to decide how to best do that, franchise it or do it whatever. And and you're in the Frisco. Well, you got two pieces here. You do one of them in Collin County, one piece of it in Frisco, and it's around the town around kids. Actually, the events are in the Frisco area. Did I have that understanding? Because I know
well, our events we cover all of the DFW Metroplex.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And the reason I bring this up is because if you're looking to take this and market it out there to people to use it, would that eliminate anybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth area from doing the same thing here, or does yours pretty well cover this whole metropolitan area?
Oh, no. If I were to expand my business, I would want somebody to handle Dallas as well.
Okay.
That's
all right.
a whole
And
separate
obviously
animal.
any other city,
Right.
because we got major cities around the country. And that's one of the things you and I are working on is how, first off, to determine what effort that's going to take, what do you need to do and want to do there to really be able to take this out on the road and do that. And I don't know how much time we have left, but one of the things I also wanted to have you share, because I really like the people talk about what really matters to them, what they're passionate about. So tell people the other dream you have, one of the things that you first contacted me about you have a desire to do. Book?
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, I have to say that when you have an idea, that's what starts the whole process. And then your passion and your belief, when they intersect with your vision, that's what creates the business. It brings it into reality. And so that's kind of how I got this started. But I've always wanted to write a book. That's been my lifelong goal. So, yes, that's something I'm starting to work on.
You got a particular thing you want to write about?
I have lots of things I want to write about.
Might it be kids?
I'm sorry?
Might it be kids?
Actually,
kids?
it would probably be about starting your own business.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that definitely goes back. The reason why I want to invite you on the show is because you're a person like me and like most people that come in this room are in some stage of that, and you have a lot of you just have a lot of gifts. It's not just because you've experienced this and what I've learned about how you built this business. You have a lot of understanding about how to do that, and therefore, when you start talking about writing this book, it's like Travis says, it could be about kids, but that really isn't your interest. Your interest is to be able to share with people what you've learned.
I wouldn't say it's not about kids, but
I mean,